Okay, so we are back after much technical difficulties. The first thing that I did is pulled up the high tunnel fact sheet. I found this fact sheet by going into the USDA website, but to make it easier, I will put a link for that in the description, but you can Google USDA high tunnel fact sheet, and there should be a option for a PDF that will take you right to it, or you can simply go to USDA's website, go to the NRCS services, which is Natural Resource Conservation Services, and just read all of the information on their page. Now that I have that pulled up, I am going to share my screen so that we can take a look at it together. And I do believe that it is working. So the high tunnel fact sheet. So here's your overview, seasonal tunnel system for crops, and it tells you about it. Assistance tells you how to contact them. Eligibility: to meet land eligibility requirements, land on the high tunnel is to be placed, must currently be in cultivation or presently capable of being planted to a crop like vegetable, berries, or flowers. Keyword: to be eligible. Okay, land on which the high tunnel is to be placed must currently be in cultivation or presently capable of being planted to a crop. That is the part where I said the area that you must be growing when they come out to do your initial, I don't know if it's an inspection or just the initial appointment that you have with them when you tell them that you want a high tunnel. They're going to look at the area. They want to see that you have already been growing, and they kind of want to see the size of the area. Now, there's debate over how big of a high tunnel you can get based on what you're growing. For me, I got the maximum size that was allowed for my area, and it was based on the size that I was already growing back there. So for me here in Michigan, the maximum size that I was allowed was 2,160 square feet, which ends up being my 30 by 72. Now, yes, I could have bought a 30 by 96 or a 30 by 100, but that means that anything that USDA did not pay for, I would have to pay for. And my goal was to not come out of pocket for my high tunnel as much as possible. So keep that in mind. Now, under specifications, it tells you that the structures shall be obtained from a commercial source. These structures sold as kits generally contain all of the required materials and hardware to erect the structure, except for the lumber needed for the baseboards and end walls. Individual kits may vary by supplier and manufacturer. Seasonal high tunnel structures shall be of adequate size to obtain 100% coverage of the crop area. The structure cover at minimum shall be made of 6 mil greenhouse grade UV resistant polyethylene. Center height of the structure shall be a minimum of 6 feet high, and all materials shall be of significant thickness to withstand the temperature modifications of the minimum of 4 years to prevent damage from heavy snow. So what you need to know is right here on this fact sheet, okay, when it comes to getting it, which goes back to purchasing from a approved high tunnel manufacturer that's on the NRCS list or as a recommendation from them. You can always find whoever you want, but those structures have to adhere to this is just about the plastic. This is not about the poles and all of that other stuff. Questions and answers. Are high tunnels the same as greenhouses? That's not what we're here to talk about. Growing in the high tunnel. This is the one. It says, how are crops grown in a high tunnel? Okay. Crops can be grown by either using conventional tillage in the natural soil profile or by installing permanent raised beds with a maximum of 12 inches in depth under the tunnel. You can grow in a raised bed in a high tunnel, but it can be no higher than 12 inches. This is an 11-inch piece of paper. So 12 inches is this high. Now, to me, that's not a raised bed. That's just a border around your bed. Because when I think raised bed, I mean up in the air at my knees or at my waist. But you can grow in a raised bed in your high tunnel, but it can be no taller than 12 inches. Seasonal high tunnel system installers under the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, EQIP, are not designed for crops to be grown on tables, benches, or in portable pots. Before you even get to your contract, there is the answer right here on the fact sheet, okay? Just want to make sure that you understand. And it's asking about are low tunnels considered high tunnels eligible for EQIP? Now here it says no, but there is another program for a low tunnel. I just don't know what it is. I know people that use low tunnels and have used USDA for them. And unfortunately, I don't know about it, so I can't give you the information on it. What are the structural requirements for a high tunnel? It's all right here. It tells you about the frame and all of that good stuff. Now it says, can I build my own high tunnel under EQIP? And the answer to that is no. The NRCS standards currently allow only for installers of prefabricated seasonal high tunnel system kits. I am not sure. Okay, this was created January of 2022. We use the community bill, and I have seen others on YouTube that actually built their own high tunnel kits that they purchased from a high tunnel manufacturer. So I'm not sure if that information is updated, but that would be something that you would ask your representative, because this fact sheet is dated January 2022, just so that you have that information. Now, the next thing is, let me get right to my contract and give you a kind of a, let's see. So one of the documents that you receive from your representative is a conservation plan. And the conservation plan gives you the information when it comes to your high tunnel. It tells me my planned amount, May of 20. So I have until, this is telling me my planned amount, the tunnel system. It says field number 2, the total square footage. And basically it was awarded to me May of this year, 2025, and I would have until May of 2026 to actually obtain the high tunnel, install the high tunnel and stuff like that. So mine's is already, it was installed the same month that I was approved. And then this is just the burden of proof statement, your Privacy Act, and the non-discrimination statement. Nothing special here on this part of the conservation plan. This is what's called a job sheet. And it's almost like the fact sheet, but this is the job sheet for Michigan, for me, and for my high tunnel. And it gives you the definition, the purpose, where used, conservation management system. Now, in the other video, I did a video the other day about soil erosion, because this is one of the conservation management systems that you have to employ, as well as a part of your maintenance. And it talks about, let me make sure this is big enough. I hope this is coming off big in here. Let me get it bigger, bigger, bigger. How about that? So there's the definition. What a high tunnel. Yeah, this right here is really old, because some of the stuff in here, they're giving the definition of a high tunnel is a polyethylene covered structure with no electrical, heating, and or mechanical ventilation systems, at least 6 feet in height, which modifies the climate to create a more favorable growing condition for crops grown in natural soil within the covered space. Well, some of that has changed. The purpose is to extend the growing season where used. Now, the conservation management system. Water runoff from the high tunnel or from other nearby sources can cause erosion and ponding issues that may require the application of other practices such as infiltration trenches, diversions, underground outlets, and critical area plantings. Additional practices should be considered as a part of the conservation plan, such as nutrient, pest management, and crop rotation. So those are all conservation management practices that you want to use, as well as you may need to use. Again, that water runoff is a big thing. So they're just letting you know. So this is the first page with that. This is the second page, and it's just telling me simple. Material list, high tunnel. You see, I asked for 100 by 30, but I was only granted 2,160 square feet. It's telling me high tunnel system construction, operation and maintenance, simple stuff. There's not much on here. This is a layout and location that these papers like really weren't needed. Now, the next document that I have is called let me see which one I want to go to now. It is a CPA 1202. And this is the Conservation Program, Conservation Program Contract. This is my actual contract. So number 3 tells you the participants agree to implement and maintain conservation practices for the life of this agreement in compliance with the plan or schedule of operations in accordance with the standards, specifications, and other special program criteria obtained from NRCS. To forfeit further payments under this agreement and refund the United States in amounts determined by NRCS any payments received hereunder upon NRCS determination that the participants have violated the terms of the agreement. That is saying, in this contract, I am agreeing to the terms of this contract, and if I don't agree to these terms of contract, I either forfeit any payments in the future, and I may have to not refund. They say refund. I may have to pay them back. That's not refund. It's pay back the government for whatever they gave me if I do not do what they say in this contract. Again, I get to read this contract before I sign anything, as well as forfeit rights to future payments. Okay, so here's the contract. It has my amounts on it. And the rest of it, again, it's nothing more than the privacy, non-discrimination. That's pretty much it on here. This is just the first part of the contract. And that's basically, the nuts and bolts of it. Now, that was the CPA 1202. That CPA 1202, I have an appendix to that. And that's where all of the general provisions to the contract are. So let's get it opened up. And again, we got the definitions, we have the eligibility, and then 3, the participant agrees to. Now, this is the long form of what we are agreeing to. And I'm agreeing to enroll eligible land into the program for a period of time as specified on Form CPA 1202. My land is already enrolled into it. That's how I got my farm number. And so that's for my 5 years. I'll be enrolled in it much longer than that. Comply with the terms and conditions of this contract. Establish, maintain, replace as specified in this contract the conservation practices or activities agreed to in CPA 155. We haven't gotten to 155. Complete a conservation practice or activity within the first 12 months of this contract. So that was that part where I told you I signed my contract in May of 2025, but that other date said May of 2026. That's that 12 months to act on the contract. I just acted on my contract within, 2 or 3 weeks. Install conservation practices and activities according to the implementation and design. That's all kind of standard. Obtain permits and easements and approvals as necessary. They're telling you do that on your own. They're not doing it. If you need them, you have to apply for it. Didn't need any of those. Discontinue implementation and notify NRCS immediately if during the construction of any conservation practice or activity, a previously unknown, unexpected, or undefined endangered species, archaeological, cultural, or historic site is encountered, or the prescribed conditions for mitigation purposes have changed. That means if you uncover some bones of some people, some relics, something's wrong with your site during construction, you find out, stop what you're doing, call in NRCS and let them know. And then you basically pause until you figure out what's going on. The next one is not undertake any action on the land under the participant's control, which tends to defeat the purpose of this contract. So I don't know what an example of that would be. I'm trying to think. I have a high tunnel installed. I would say setting up a kickball field across from my high tunnel, something that would defeat the purpose of what you're doing. I don't know what that is. I don't have anything that's defeating the purpose, but it's in the contract. And it says not start any financially assisted conservation practice or activity before this contract is executed by NRCS unless NRCS approves a waiver. It means two things. So I get the first information from my rep that says, hey, you've been approved for your high tunnel. We have to get your documents together. And I'm so happy. I run out and I go and pay ABC for this high tunnel. And I just start putting the high tunnel up and just doing my own thing. And I have not been approved and the contract has not been executed. That means stop what you're doing until you get your contract, until that contract is signed and you know that you are moving forward. For me, even with the signed contract, I was not moving forward until I made sure that those payment pieces were set up. They did what they were supposed to do. Funds were sent in advance. I then went out and purchased my high tunnel using that method and then assigned the rest of the payment to the company. Complete and file Form CCC 902, Farm Operating Plan, and as needed Form CCC 901, member information as required by USDA under the CRF, payment limitations, You fill out those forms. We fill those forms out because we're already using their services. File forms required by NRCS for applicable payment limitations and determination. File form CCC 941, that is the average AGI certification and consent to disclosure of tax information required by USDA for adjustable gross income determination. If you don't want them, because a lot of things that they do, they go by adjustable gross income. I believe that adjustable gross income number is something crazy. It's not anything that I have to be worried about. I want to say 500,000, something way up there in the stratosphere. So showing them that I don't make that in the AGI is not a problem. But again, if you don't want to disclose your tax information, nobody is pulling your thumb to make you, okay? Provide to NRCS upon request completed forms CPA 1257, landowner concurrence for structure or vegetative activities. That's just a form letting them know what you're doing on your form. Again, some people don't want to fill out these forms. You don't have to. It's in the contract. You can talk to your rep. You can get a copy of they have these sample contracts on their website, and you can make your own notes next to each one of these as to what they are. Talk to your rep in advance and say, what is form CPA 1155? Give it to me in regular terms, not all of this. And they'll tell you that form is where you report your conservation practices. This form is where you're going to be reporting your adjustable gross income each year. And that way you will have it put away if this video explaining it well enough. It's kind of hard for me to explain this contract, but what I can tell you is that I read the contract and there was nothing in it that deterred me. It says retain all records, including receipts, proof of completion and payments, and other documents related to this contract for a period of 3 full years after completion of the terms of this contract, and give to NRCS, the Office of Inspector General, or the Comptroller General, through any authorized representative, access to the right to examine all records, books, papers, and documents related to this contract. So keep your records for 3 years after you've completed the contract, and be willing to give those records over to NRCS or anybody that's representative. They may get audited and need your records because maybe they don't have their records. They may need your records to compare to their records. You may have emails that say something and they may have something. It's just a check and balance, in my opinion. Now, this next one, number 14, is allow access to the land under contract to the NRCS representative or its representatives, NRCS representative or its representative. I don't say the same thing twice, but for monitoring progress of this contract, you must allow access to NRCS representatives to check on your progress, to make sure that you're doing what the contract says. It's about annually. They can ask to come out more than that. I don't know why. My rep, the only time that he came out an additional time, he was actually training someone, and he thought that my property would be a good place to bring his trainees. So personally, I was happy that he even considered me, and they did not just show up. They do not just show up. They are not supposed to just show up. Let me go back to number 14. NRCS shall provide reasonable notification to the participant prior to entering the land under contract, meaning reasonable notification. They need to send you an email, call you, something like that. What is reasonable? That's left to determination by both parties, I guess. But it also means that don't just show up at my door and say, we need to see your land. Now, you have a contract. They show up, you can say, you didn't provide me with reasonable notification. For me, if I'm here, a phone call saying, hey, I'm in the area, can I stop by in about an hour? I'm not doing anything. Come on by. I am doing what my contract said I am supposed to do. So I don't have a problem with allowing them to come. And again, I was quite honored that you were in my area, you had trainees, and you thought, let me take them over there. And in that visit was where I learned some different things from my rep, because while he come out to see something else in the past, I was doing some other things that put me in a group of conservation that I had overlooked, and he noticed on his own. So it was a win-win for me. So again, you got to allow them access. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. You don't want the government on your land. This is not for you. You're doing something you're not supposed to be doing in that high tunnel that they gave you with their money, and in the end, you pay hardly nothing for. This is not for you. But there is nobody on earth that is going to give you money and not want to know what you are doing with the money, to see if you spent the money on what you said. Even if you go to your family member and ask for, I don't know, $20. If you say, can I borrow $20? They looking at you like, what you need that $20 for? And you say, well, I got to get some gas. So if they're giving you a bunch of money, you got to do some things. And these things are not too far out of the realm. It says not engage the services of a certified technical service provider, a TSP, before this contract is executed. They want you to conduct business with NRCS employees and representatives in a respectful manner and ensure the safety of NRCS employees and representatives while on your site. It just be nice to them. They are going to do the same for you. That's where the next says NRCS agrees, subject to availability of funds, to approve your payment, pay based on the actual extent of the contract corrections, modifications, and transfer. Contract corrections. NRCS reserves the right to correct all errors in entering data or the result of computations in this contract. If the participant does not agree to such corrections, NRCS shall terminate the contract as a whole. Let's just say they did your contract, they made a mistake in the math, and they said they said that you were approved for $20,000. They went back and looked at it, or you looked at it and said, hey, these numbers don't add up. Oh, they added an extra 1 or 2. You should have only been approved for $12,000. They have to make that correction. Hopefully that is all done before any money is spent. When they make the correction for $12,000, you say, you know what? It's not even worth my time. I don't like that. And NRCS says, okay, we can't agree. We'll terminate the contract. Maybe we start a whole new one, go through the process again, but it can be dead. Or you can say, I don't want to do this contract. Contract modification. So that was a correction. NRCS and the participant may agree to modify this contract upon determination and approval of NRCS that the modification is consistent with the purpose of the program and is in the public interest. So there can be a modification, they have to approve it, and those are the terms. I can't think of a modification example. Contract transfer. The participant must provide written notice to NRCS within 60 days of any voluntary or involuntary loss of control of any acreage under the contract. 60 days, okay? Including changes in participants' ownership, structure, or corporate form. NRCS will terminate the contract if timely notice is not provided, if an eligible producer is not identified in the notice, or if the new producer is not approved by NRCS to accept the terms and conditions of the contract. What's an example of this one? You lose your property, I guess. Let's just say that one is it. You know that you're losing it in voluntary or involuntary. You give them a 60-day notice and say such and such is taking this property now. You want to put their name to see if they want to take over your contract. This is how to transfer a contract. It says NRCS may approve a transfer of the contract if the new producer meets the program eligibility requirements within a reasonable time frame as determined by NRCS. The new producer agrees to assume the rights and responsibilities for the acreage under the contract, and NRCS determines that the purpose of the program will continue to be met. This could also mean you are selling your property. And I don't know, everybody's into homesteading, and this could be both a advantage over a property or as well as a disadvantage. Let's just say you have a person that's looking for a property and you already have a high tunnel. You are 3 years in on your agreement, so there are 2 years left. You put your property up for sale and you say, my property is agricultural. It has a farm and tract number, is enrolled in these USDA conservation NRCS programs, and one of them is a high tunnel. If purchasing this property, you are agreeing to take over control of this contract, which has 2 years left. This is what you have to do. You share your contract with them. You let them know that they have to become eligible under USDA. And somebody may say, oh my goodness, this is what I wanted. And they take over your contract. Someone else may say, you know what? I want to do this on my own. I don't want the government in my business. I don't want this high tunnel. They are not taking it over. What happens with that? I don't know. So it's telling you, so if they if you get somebody that wants it and they can be approved, it's a good thing. So it says until NRCS approves the transfer of contract rights, the new producer is not a participant and may not receive payment for conservation practices or activities commenced prior to approval of the contract transfer. When NRCS approves the contract transfer, the transferee accepts all rights, responsibility, including the right to payment for activities and practices implemented on the transferred land. So if you're already, now you have the high tunnel, but a lot of people who, well, not a lot, some people who have the high tunnel also are getting what's called a conservation grant. And that's anywhere from, I don't know, maybe $3,000 to $5,000. I've seen different people say their amounts a year. Over the course of a couple of years, they're getting this grant money to help them. You transfer, it goes through. Not only do they get your high tunnel and everything, but they'll also get those payments. What I don't see in this contract transfer is what happens if you're selling your property and that person is not eligible or does not want to take your contract. And does that mean you can move your high tunnel with you? What happens? That is not in here. Contract violations and terminations. Maybe that's where it is. NRCS may terminate this contract in whole or in part without liability if NRCS determines that the continued operation of this contract will result in a violation of the statute or its regulation. NRCS can determine that a participant is not in violation of the contract for failure to comply with the contract if the circumstances for failing to comply were beyond the control of the participant, including a disaster or related condition as determined by NRCS. They can terminate it and determine that you're not in violation. All of this goes to say that it's about the communication. It's going to always be about communication. The contract terminates upon death of the participant unless the estate or other successors of the deceased participant, as determined by NRCS, assumes responsibility. I see what they're saying about the termination. That's not maybe. That will be a question that I will add to ask my rep. Let's just say we went to sell our property again. 1 year left, 2 years left, and whoever it is either does not qualify in some reason under NRCS, or they don't want to qualify. I'm wondering, you know, from what I'm reading, depending on where we are in the contract, they could terminate the contract in whole or in part. They could determine a payment amount. So if we say $17,000 over 5 years, maybe I'm just paying them back this part. In the middle of making that video, I sent an email over to my rep to ask these exact questions, and he called me right back. So here are the answers. Here is an example with all three. You're selling your home, you're losing your home, or you're selling your home to a person who doesn't want your contract. You are responsible for the term of that contract. So if it's 5 years, and no matter what is happening, you still have to complete the contract, or you will be responsible in whole or in part as determined by USDA. That's the answer. Payment, collection, and recovery of costs. They're going to get their money. That's what that says. You do have the rights to appeal for equitable relief, civil rights requirements, general terms. One of the things that was mentioned was about historically underserved. And I want to pull that up. Let me get rid of this. So we're going to go to Google. I'm going to pull it up. USDA, NRCS. So let's just go over the definition of what historically underserved groups are. A beginning farmer or rancher, a limited resource farmer or rancher, a socially disadvantaged farmer or rancher, and a veteran farmer or rancher. Now, this is the Alaska page, because that was just the one that I picked. Here are the self-evaluation determination questions. This is on USDA website. You can go in this. Beginning farmer or rancher, have you as an individual or entity applying operated a farm or ranch for not more than 10 consecutive years? Will you, so here it is. Historically underserved does not just mean, I won't address what it does not mean. Let's just stick to what it does mean. It means beginning farmer or rancher, limited resource farmer or rancher, socially disadvantaged farmer or rancher, and a veteran farmer or rancher. That's what it means. Now, even right here, yes, no, you can get right down to it. When it comes to limited resource farmer or rancher, in each of the last 2 years, was your direct or indirect gross farm sales less than or equal to the predetermined amount found online at the NRCS Limited Resource Farmer tool? Now, this form is quoting the year 2019 of 177,300. If I find a newer form, this form was updated in 2020. So if I found a more recent form, that number probably wouldn't be 177,000. It brings me back to that one from 2019. That's the 2025. Okay. Limited resource. Okay. Let's see if this tool is more updated. Online tool. There we go. Let's select the state. I am Michigan. County. Gross farm sales. In each of the tax years of 2022 and 2023 was your direct or indirect gross farm sales less than or equal to $227,100? It was less than that. Adjustable gross income determination. In each of the tax years of 2022 and 2023 was your total household income less than the Washtenaw County value of $43,138. That would be a no for me. And you can see that it has the two red ones required. So it has to be a yes and yes for you to qualify for a limited resource farmer. That's it. We look at my results. Based on your answers to the two questions, you are not eligible to qualify as a limited resource. The tool is online. What I'm trying to get you to understand is you don't have to guess. You don't have to listen to me, and you don't have to listen to anybody else. You can go online. They have all of these nice little tools to help you. And then there are representatives that can help you. Socially disadvantaged, there, and it says gender alone is not a socially disadvantaged group for the purpose of NRCS conservation program. We don't even have to talk about veteran. Veteran is a veteran. If you can't figure out what a veteran is, you need more help than me. And I had a question was, is there something on the contract that says in small printing that the government can come and take your crops? All the printing was the same size. There's nothing that says that they can just come take your lettuce or come take. I don't know why they would. For me, if there was some type of an emergency and they needed my little lettuce in the high tunnel that they gave me money to buy, I would easily give it to them. But that's not something for me to be alarmed with. Can the government, can they just show up at your property anytime they want to? Based on that contract, they can't. They're supposed to give you reasonable notification. Again, I'm not doing anything that I don't mind them showing up for. As long as I'm here and I'm not in the middle of doing something, or if I'm in the middle of doing something and they need to show up, they're going to be helping me before they leave. That's what they're going to mess around and do. They're going to mess around and get put to work. But reasonable notification. You both will treat each other with respect. Your contract term, for me, for this high tunnel, I'm not sure if it's different for other people or if your size makes it different, but my contract is for 5 years, grow in the ground, raised bed if I choose to, which I'm going to call a border, no taller than 12 inches. Maintenance, erosion, conservation, any of those practices to help maintain that tunnel. Don't do anything on your land that defeats the purpose of them giving you a high tunnel. Meaning, don't have a high tunnel set up on the back of your property and then you set up a shooting range in front of it, I guess. It just doesn't make sense. You are agreeing to allow them to see those tax forms that have to do with adjustable gross income, farm income, and farm operation stuff. Well, I want to say that was all of the questions. You know what? There are always programs out there to help you out with your homestead or your farming journey. Just look into USDA. If this information is not for you, it's not something you agree with, all you have to do is go like this. Scroll on up, or go like that. Real simple. We don't have to argue. You just keep it moving. But for everybody else, I hope this information was helpful. Thank you for watching. I'm officially Fran. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and bye-bye for now.